The fog behind me thickened into a wall, blocking the road I had just driven. I noticed it in the rearview mirror first. At the time, I thought it was just the fog rolling in from the valley. Mountain roads did that sometimes. Cold air sliding down the slopes, pooling in the low spots until visibility shrank to a few yards. But this was different. The fog wasn't drifting. It was standing still. My headlights cut through the darkness ahead in two weak yellow cones, illuminating the damp ribbon of asphalt winding between tall pine trees. Everything outside that narrow beam dissolved into gray vapor. The engine hummed steadily beneath me. Tires hissed on the moist road. For a while, the fog just hovered there in the mirror, distant but unnervingly solid. It looked less like mist and more like a pale wall stretching across the highway behind me. I drove another mile before I realized something was wrong. It wasn't getting farther away. It was getting closer. I slowed instinctively and glanced back again. The fog had thickened into something dense and opaque, swallowing the trees and guardrails behind me. Where the road should have curved down the mountain was nothing but a vertical sheet of white, like a door closing. I frowned and tapped the brakes, pulling onto a narrow turnout overlooking a steep drop into the forest. The engine idled quietly. For a moment, I just sat there listening. The night felt wrong. Normally, even in the mountains, there were sounds. Wind pushing through branches, insects buzzing in the dark, distant water moving somewhere below. But the forest had gone silent. Utterly silent. I stepped out of the car. Cold, damp air wrapped around me instantly, soaking through my jacket. The fog ahead of the car drifted lazily across the road, thin enough that the beam of my headlights carved tunnels through it. Behind me was something else entirely. I walked to the edge of the turnout and turned toward the highway. The fog wall stood about 30 yards back, perfectly straight across the road. It didn't move. It didn't curl or swirl like normal mist. It just existed, dense, smooth, almost solid. My stomach tightened. I took a few cautious steps toward it. The air grew colder the closer I got. The smell changed too, less like damp forest and more like something metallic, sharp against the back of my throat. When I reached the edge of the fog, I stopped. I couldn't see a single inch beyond it. Not the road, not the trees, just white. I extended my hand into it. The fog parted around my fingers slowly, reluctantly, as if the air had thickened into something heavier than vapor. For a second, I thought I heard something inside it. A faint sound, like breathing. I pulled my hand back immediately. The silence returned. I told myself it was nothing, just mountain weather doing something strange. Still, I got back in the car and decided to turn around. Except when I put the car in reverse and rolled back toward the fog, the headlights struck something inside it. Movement. I froze. The beam revealed a shadow sliding through the mist about 20 feet away. Tall, thin. It moved sideways across the road and disappeared again. My heart began to pound. I leaned closer to the windshield, squinting. "Hello!" My voice sounded small in the car. The fog answered. A sound came from inside it. Not quite an echo, not quite a voice. "Hello!" But the words stretched strangely, as if someone had spoken it underwater. I swallowed hard. That was enough. I shifted into drive and pulled away from the turnout, accelerating up the mountain road. If the fog wanted the road behind me, it could have it. The highway curved through dense forest, climbing steadily. My headlights skimmed over slick pavement and mossy guardrails. But after 10 minutes of driving, something started to bother me. The fog ahead was getting thicker, not drifting in from the sides, waiting, like it had already been there. I slowed as the visibility shrank. Then I saw something else. Shapes in the fog. At first I thought they were trees bending across the road. But they moved. Slow silhouettes sliding between the beams of my headlights. Too tall, too narrow. They passed across the road without making a sound. I slammed the brakes. The car skidded slightly before stopping. The shapes vanished. The fog crept closer. My pulse thudded in my ears. Something wasn't right with the road. I looked down at the dashboard clock. 1:14 a.m. but I distinctly remembered it being 12:30 when I stopped at the turnout. Had I really been driving that long? The engine ticked quietly as it idled. Outside, the fog thickened further. Then something tapped the rear window. I spun around. Nothing. Just fog pressing against the glass. But a moment later it happened again. Tap, tap. Not on the window this time. On the trunk. Like someone following behind the car. I threw the car back into gear and sped forward. The road curved sharply to the right. The fog parted slightly. And suddenly the forest opened. Ahead of me the highway ended at a wide clearing carved into the mountainside. In the center of the clearing stood a structure. Not a building. Something taller. A tower of thin black poles rising high above the treetops, tangled together like a nest made of metal. Dozens of shapes hung from it. At first I thought they were branches. Then the headlights illuminated one clearly. A car, suspended by its frame. Another hung beside it. And another. Vehicles twisted together high above the clearing like insects caught in a web. My hands trembled on the wheel. Behind me, the fog rolled forward across the road. Not drifting, advancing, closing the way back. The shapes inside it moved again. Tall silhouettes sliding through the mist. I realized then what the fog had been doing. Not chasing me, guiding me, herding me up the mountain road toward the clearing. Toward the tower. The engine idled as the fog crept closer to the rear bumper. The silhouettes inside it stopped moving, waiting, and in the center of the clearing, something shifted among the hanging cars. Slowly, like it had been expecting me. My radio displayed a station number that didn't exist, playing only my breathing. At first I thought it was feedback. The car had been parked for almost an hour on a narrow overlook above a long, empty stretch of mountain highway. I'd pulled over because the fog had rolled in too quickly to drive through safely. It had come pouring up from the valley like slow smoke, swallowing the road until even my headlights could barely reach the guardrail. So I waited. The engine idled softly, a steady mechanical hum vibrating through the steering wheel. My headlights pointed out across the overlook, where the fog pressed against the beams like pale fabric. The radio had been playing quietly for most of the drive. Late-night talk drifting in and out between bursts of static. Somewhere around midnight, the signal faded completely. I didn't notice when the station changed. Only when I heard the breathing. At first it was faint, barely louder than the engine. A slow inhale, then a long, steady exhale. I glanced at the dashboard. The digital display glowed pale blue in the dark. 98.3. Except the numbers didn't look right. They flickered for a moment before settling again. 98.3. But I knew the stations in this region. I'd driven these mountain roads 100 times. 98.3 didn't broadcast anywhere nearby. I leaned closer to the speakers. Another breath. Slow. Measured. Took me a second to realize something else. The rhythm matched mine. I held my breath. The radio went silent. Then it inhaled. A slow, deliberate intake of air that did not come from me. I sat very still. The fog outside the car thickened against the windshield. Moisture crawled slowly down the glass in thin streaks, catching the glow of the headlights. The radio exhaled again. A perfect copy of the breath I'd taken earlier. "Okay," I muttered. My voice sounded strange in the enclosed space of the car. The radio crackled. "Okay." The word came back distorted, stretched thin through static. My chest tightened. I reached for the volume knob and turned it down. The breathing faded but didn't disappear completely. It lingered beneath the engine noise like something hiding just beneath the surface of the sound. Outside, the fog shifted slightly. I could see the vague outline of the guardrail through the mist, running along the edge of the overlook before disappearing down the slope. Everything else was gone. The forest, the road, the sky, just fog pressing against the car like a wall. I tried another station. The numbers on the display changed as I turned the dial. 101.2, 94.7, 87.9, all static. Then the display flickered again. 98.3. I hadn't touched the dial. The breathing returned. This time it was closer, louder. I turned the radio off. The speakers went silent. For a moment, the only sound inside the car was the engine and the faint ticking of the dashboard clock. Then the radio turned itself back on. 98.3. The speakers crackled. A breath filled them. Then another, not quite matching mine anymore. This one was slower, heavier, like someone standing close to the microphone. I stared at the display. The digits began to change. 98.3 became 99.0, then 99.7, then numbers I'd never seen before. 103.12, 104.88. The radio didn't even display that many decimals normally. The fog outside thickened further. My headlights began to dim, not shutting off, just weakening, like the light was being absorbed by something in the mist. I leaned back in the seat and forced myself to breathe slowly. "This is just a glitch," I said. The radio answered immediately. Just a glitch. But the voice wasn't quite mine. Carried a hollow undertone, like two voices layered together. I switched the engine off. The car fell quiet. The dashboard lights glowed faintly in the dark. And still the radio kept playing. 98.3. The speakers hissed. Then a voice spoke. My voice. "I shouldn't have come up here." My stomach tightened. I hadn't said that aloud. I'd only thought it earlier when the fog started rising from the valley. The radio repeated it again. "I shouldn't have come up here." The speakers crackled. Then another sentence. One I hadn't thought yet. Something standing outside the car. I turned slowly toward the driver's side window. The fog pressed against the glass. For a moment I saw nothing. Then a shape shifted within it. Tall, thin, just beyond the reach of the headlights. My pulse thudded in my ears. The radio whispered again. "It's closer now." The shape leaned forward. The fog warped around it, bending the light in strange ways. I couldn't see details, just the outline. Too tall to be a person. The car's side mirror suddenly flickered with static. The reflection inside it distorted, stretching the fog into long white streaks. For a second, I thought I saw something else in the mirror. Another shape, standing directly behind the car. The radio crackled loudly. Then it spoke again. This time the voice sounded breathless. "Don't turn around." My hands tightened on the steering wheel. The mirror trembled slightly. Something tapped the trunk. Soft, metallic. Tap, tap. The radio inhaled sharply. Then it spoke the words slowly. "You're almost at the right place." My throat felt dry. "What place?" I whispered. The speakers hummed. Then a new sound bled into the broadcast. Not breathing, not my voice. A low mechanical tone, like distant radio towers transmitting at once. The digits on the display changed again. 0.0. The fog outside began to glow faintly. I realized then that the overlook wasn't empty. Shapes were moving through the mist below the guardrail. Dozens of them, standing in the fog, facing the car. Watching. The radio whispered one final sentence in my voice. "They've been listening to you drive for a long time." The engine started on its own. The headlights flared brighter than before, cutting through the fog for a brief moment. And in that flash of light, I saw the road beyond the overlook. Not the mountain highway I had driven. A long, straight strip of pavement disappearing into darkness, filled with parked cars, all facing the same direction, all with their radios glowing faintly through the fog.